I debated a long time whether or not I should do this series, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Creepiest things that have happened to me as a nurse. Part 1. This one night shift, the hospital was at capacity, and we were changing beds left and right, admitting, discharging. And we had run out of beds, and the only bed that was available was broken, so we had to go all the way downstairs to a different building to get a new bed. I went with another tech, and the room was totally creepy and dark, and there was only one bed left. On our way back, as we're totally creeped out, it's about 3 a.m, in this long hallway. We're in the middle of the hallway, and the lights flash on and off. The tech I'm with screamed. I screamed right after because she screamed, and then we saw this in the middle of the bed. A huge, giant man's footprint. So creepy. I know it wasn't there when we picked up the bed because we made the bed. I will never forget that night. This photo is actually on my Instagram. You should follow me on Instagram. What creepy stories?
Wow, I just had a really interesting experience. So I have to cover my shirt because it's my company name and people don't need to know where I work. But I was just visiting one of my transitioning patients. She's actually like actively dying. And we were just like, I was just, around the bed with, her daughters, and we're having a conversation, just talking about a bunch of random things. And, we come out of the room, we're in the kitchen talking. In the room, I got a phone call. My phone was on vibrate. I forgot that I turned it on vibrate, so I felt my pocket vibrating. I was like, oh, I got a call. I'm thinking that it's the number, it was a Blue Island number. If you're in Illinois, you know that. I thought the area code, like the number calling, was a different, like, patient's family member. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I have a patient in that area who's also actively dying. Maybe, this is the phone call. And I saw that I had a voicemail left, right? So when we're in the kitchen, I'm talking to the patient's daughters, and I'm telling them, because this patient specifically, today is Tuesday, she hasn't opened her eyes or talked or did anything. Like, she's kind of been like in a comatose state since, I want to say it was Saturday. When I came to my visit yesterday, as soon as she heard my voice, she opened her eyes. She tried to look at me. She started moving, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, was she waiting to see me, hear me? And I was the only person that was able to arouse her, over the past 2 days. Obviously, when I came today, she wasn't, waking up. She wasn't moving, opening her eyes, none of that. But I was, talking to them about I try as a nurse, especially in this line of work, to keep kind of a little bit of a barrier, and not like in an informal, cold way, but just I have to protect my, mental health and my own well-being as well, because this job, when you work in hospice, you see people die all day, every day. And so it can be emotionally taxing and draining. And so, I do my best to try to keep a little bit of a barrier, but there are some patients and families who just poke through that barrier and knock it down, and you get really close, and you get attached. And so I'm telling them about a patient that I had lost back in I want to say it was back in March, if I remember correctly, or either April, one of the two. And I was very close to that patient. She was with me for about 9 or 10 months. I got really close with her daughter, love her daughter down. We are still like this. And I was telling them about her, and I was like, I think your mom might be a close, second to that. Not like she's second place to that patient, but just she might be another one who I just will remember her, and it'll be difficult for me to forget her because of how impactful she is. And so I leave the visit, I get in my car, and I check my phone because I had a missed call. So I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh, I have a voicemail. Let me listen to the voicemail. Well, it was only a 6-second silent voicemail. There was no talking. There was no nothing, just a silent voicemail. And so I call the number back, and I didn't hear the name of the facility. I thought it was a different facility that I have another patient at. So I'm, talking to the receptionist, and she's like, oh, no, we don't have a patient here by that name. And I'm like, wait, what facility did you say this was again? And she says the name, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, I had a patient here who died back in March or April. I forget now which month it was, but I'm like, yeah, I had a patient there who passed. And the receptionist was like, okay, hold on. She puts me on hold for a few seconds, and then she comes back and she's like, yeah, nobody called regarding that person. I'm not sure why you got a call, but yeah, no one called. And I was like, what the heck? I was literally just talking about that patient or thinking about her. And for me to have a missed call with a silent voicemail from that facility that patient was at and nobody called me, I had to call that family back that I was just with, and I told one of her daughters, like, you will never believe what the heck just happened. Like, we were just talking about how impactful this patient was to me. Obviously, I didn't share like specifics of like names or anything like that, but just like explaining to them like how impactful this patient was for me and how difficult her passing was, because it was like, in hospice, things aren't necessarily unexpected, but her passing was unexpected because nobody saw it coming. Like, she wasn't showing signs that she was going to pass before she passed. And so I just like shook it up, because like, what the heck? Like, things happen to me, but this might by far be one that is just like, it takes the cake of like strange things that have happened. Like, I've never had that happen, and I'm shook. So I don't know, but like in a good way, because I'm smiling. So like, I feel good. Like, my girl's with me, she be looking out, and she just wanted to say hi, I guess. I don't know, maybe her and my patient who's passing, maybe she came to just say hello, and say hello to me. So yeah, it's things like this as a hospice nurse that just make you be like, okay, like, I know as a nurse, I've made an impact in people's lives, and they're grateful and appreciative, and people have made an impact in my life just as much. And yeah, it's crazy. I just wanted to share that. That's it. That's all. Gotta go back.
Welcome back to I'm a Nurse, and I used to work at a haunted nursing home. Here are my stories, and for this episode, I do have a guest here with me. But before we get into the story, I just want to give you a little bit of background. So on this dark and spooky night, I was working on the first floor. She was working on the second floor. And I had a resident that was a 1-to-1, meaning he had to have a caregiver stay in the room with him. That caregiver went out on her break. I had to go into the room and sit with him while she was on her break. During that time, I walkied for assistants to come down and give me a hand with getting all of my residents checked on, changed, and taken to the bathroom. And at that point, she comes downstairs, and I'm in the room. The caregiver comes back. I come out, ready to get to business, and all of a sudden, we get a call on the walkie for myself and the nurse, because at the time, we were not nurses. We were only in nursing school, and we were just CNAs. So without further ado, let me introduce everybody to Carly.
Hey.
Carly is my cousin. She is also a nurse. She also was my coworker there and other places. So let's backtrack and let's revisit the scariest, most terrifying event that we have experienced while working at our previous facility.
Scariest by far for me and her.
Literally terrifying. And you won't believe it, because most people don't believe it when we tell it. So for this night, we were, like I said, business as usual, doing what we do. All of a sudden, this one calls on the walkie saying, Angela and nurse, you both need to get down here right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells us the room number.
Yep.
My initial thought was, oh no, this person, the resident, we will call her Sarah for the sake of this video. I'm thinking Sarah fell. So I go running over. When I go running over, she's like, look in the room. And I'm like, what do you mean? She was like, look in the room.
Yeah, I didn't touch nothing. I left everything so they could see it.
Mind you,
I didn't touch nothing.
I had not been in the room since about 11, and this was probably like somewhere between like 1:30-ish, because we used to check on everybody and do rounds like that every 2 hours. So I pushed the door open. Immediately to my right is the bathroom. The bathroom light was on, and then the rest of the room was to the front of me. The light was off. At that point in time, we look over. The resident is sleeping soundly in the bed.
Out cold. Knocked out.
But
Deep sleep.
but, I take one glance in that room, and I'm like, what the fuck happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And
I think the bathroom was to the left.
yeah, it was to the left.
Okay.
Sorry. I
Sorry.
don't know my left and right.
That's
Anyway,
okay.
nonetheless, doesn't make a difference.
No,
Bathroom
I don't,
light was
but
on.
that bothered me. Anyway, go ahead.
So I glanced down, and the resident had a bedside table that was like a corner table and had photos, like family pictures and stuff in little frames, a photo of Jesus, a little vase with some artificial flowers in it, all on that table. When I look into the room, all of the pictures that were on that table are face down, and they are leading a trail from where the table was in the corner around and into the bathroom. Face down. Additionally, the photograph of Jesus was
So weird.
face up on the floor.
Oh, God.
Smashed over top of it was the vase and the artificial flowers.
So there's glass everywhere, mind you.
Glass everywhere. But the one thing that is physically impossible for this resident to have done, the table was in the bathroom, placed over top of the toilet.
Of her toilet.
It had 3 legs, so it's not one that you could just slide over the toilet.
Right.
It was picked up and placed over it. And we had to clean these items up. That table was heavy. I lifted it.
And also, it's like, all right, we checked her feet and everything. No blood, no
Yep.
nothing. No signs of, like, walking. Like, her feet would have been bloody. As much glass as
She
there
would have
was.
had cuts. She would have had
Absolutely.
cuts. The amount of glass, I'm pretty sure I ended up cutting my finger when we were picking the stuff up a little bit
Yep,
because
me
the
too.
glass was sharp. It
It
was
was
like
bad.
that really thin type of glass. Anyway, we check on the resident, find no evidence that she had anything to do with this. She physically could not have lifted that table. Even if she would have, like, with her dementia diagnosis, thought maybe she was using her walker and, like, pushed
Right.
it along the way. Impossible.
Impossible.
So the nurse comes down after we already see this and we're like, what the heck is going on? And she thought we were calling her down there to kill a bug or something, which is another story for a whole nother time.
Right.
But anyway, she comes down, she takes one look in the room and she goes, nope, and walks away.
And walks away.
Left us there. So we proceed to get everything gathered up, cleaned up. We pick up all the pictures. We get a broom. We sweep up the glass. We get as much glass off of the portrait of Jesus as we can. I pick the table up. I put it back where it goes. We put everything neatly back on the table.
Yep.
But we look up, and on the wall, hanging up above, now I'm 5'1" for reference. This resident was much, much shorter than me.
Much shorter.
I would not have been able to reach this item. She could have, probably.
I could have probably.
But I would not have been able to reach this item. Tell them what was hanging on the wall.
So she had a crucifix. That crucifix was literally upside down, which it was never like that. It was never placed like that. It was always in the proper position. That shit was hanging upside down, along with all this other stuff. So it's given demonic. It's bad. It's eerie. It feels weird anyway to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
That
so,
room.
with that being said, that room was terrifying. That room is also the room that had the stuffed animals in a circle and the teddy bear facing the doorway that I told about in a previous video. If you haven't
With
seen
a
that,
different patient. right?
patient.
Yeah,
Yep. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch it. But with that being said, that room was terrifying. It always had a very dark, negative type energy.
yeah. Very eerie.
The resident herself, when she was in that room and only when she was in that room,
Weird.
if you would wake her up and she would look at you, her response was not like any other resident on the floor. It was almost as if her eyes were blank and she was staring into your
Real
soul.
dark, and she would just like stare into your soul. It was scary.
But when she was not in that room, she was bubbly. She
Perky,
was sweet,
laughing, confused, but okay.
very, very, very adorable and social. Not when she was in that room. So, was there something in that room that was affecting her and decided to screw around with us that night, or got mad and decided to prove a point?
Right.
I don't know. We can't explain it.
I'll never forget it.
It
I know
was
it seems
terrifying.
unbelievable. So happy I had witnesses because I will never forget that night.
After that, I was very scared to go in that room alone. We used to tag team it. And, we would still go in if we were by ourselves, but we just used a lot of caution, and it really
Yes.
freaked us out.
I've encountered some other things there, but that by far takes the cake for me.
Terrifying.
For her too.
One
Yeah.
word. Terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, I hope you guys liked that story. If you have not watched my previous videos, go back, follow along, give me some likes, leave me some comments so I can keep posting and I will tell you guys more. And Carly might come back and join us for some of those. So hope you really.
Okay, let me tell you all about the time that wasn't that long ago that EMS tried to give me a patient that was already dead on arrival. So long story short, it's really not a long story. EMS, I learned a long time ago, meet EMS wherever you can meet them at. Like if you're a nurse in a facility, do not wait until the resident's already in the room and EMS tries to come up to the nurse's desk to talk to you. Go meet EMS in the room with the patient. So that's what I did. So I met EMS. As soon as I see EMS, mind you, I work agency. I don't know if I said that already. So I always walk into bullshit. So I really never know what's going on anyways. So once EMS had walked into the door, I met them at the door, right? So I'm talking to them and like I talk a lot. So normally when I get in the mission, like as soon as I see the admission, I try to start building a rapport and get in a baseline at the door. So when EMS brings the patient in, I'm talking to the patient. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be bothering you today. Like, hi, what's your name? Where you coming from? Like, and then it was at 11 at night. So I'm like, you're coming at the middle of the night, like, whatever. I'm getting no response, y'all. I'm not getting no response. So I'm like, okay. So then I start like really looking at the patient. And while I'm looking at the patient, I'm like, this patient is not alive. There's no respirations. The patient's not moving. I start feeling for a pulse. There's no pulse. And then there's like they're not like sternal rub, nothing, like nothing's working. So I'm like, okay, this is great. Mind you, EMS is just standing there while I'm trying all these things. Like they're literally just standing there. And so then I'm like, hey, y'all gotta take this patient back wherever y'all got him from. Like I'm like, they know nothing about this patient. The only thing that they knew about the patient was the DNR. They know nothing else about this patient. So I'm like, hey, y'all gotta take him back where y'all got him from. So she's like, they're basically telling me like, we're not taking him back. Like y'all gotta keep him. Now, if the patient was hospice, I probably would have kept him because it's like, but listen, no. So I'm like, no, he's not about to stay here. Like, you got to take him back wherever you got him from. Like, he's dead. Like, and he's been dead. Like, he's dead. Like, it's not like he just died. Like, I can see if he was like, I don't know what I can see, but he's not staying here. So, and it's like not really nothing to argue about. But mind you, I'm agency, so I don't even know who my DON is. So once like I go get one of the caretakers, and mind you, I'm the only nurse. So I go get one of the caretakers is telling me who the DON is. I call the DON. The DON was like, yeah, the patient cannot stay here. Like maybe if the patient was hospice, obviously, because then hospitals just have to come and do their little one too. But I'm not doing a whole death with somebody I never even met before. So y'all, like making a long story short, me and EMS is like going back and forth because they're like, we're not taking him back anywhere. Like this is y'all's patient now. Like we're in your building. I'm like, I don't care where you're at. Like you could have been in the room and he could have been transferred over to the bed. I didn't sign off on any patients, so they're not staying here. So long story short, the EMS was pissed and they ended up taking the patient back to wherever they. And mind you, the hospital was literally across the street, so I don't know if the patient was dead when EMS had got to the hospital. I'm assuming not, but I don't know when the patient had died. But the patient was already dead. The patient was not cold though. Like the patient was still warm. So I don't think like they purposely brought me a dead patient, but they brought me a dead patient. So the patient was not staying here. So long story short, just check your patients way before they enter. Like try to check them before they even enter the room. But obviously, like sometimes EMS will get in the room before you, but never ever ever sign off on a patient you never seen, because all
right, here's scary nursing story number 6. I want to put any trigger warning for all of my stories. They are darker, involve death, but this one involves postpartum psychosis and depression. And if that's triggering for you, then this is a good video to skip. This person says, hey Becca, I'm loving your stories. I wanted to add that you said nursing homes and pediatrics have the best scary stories, but I'm a psychiatric nurse and I will call your bluff because on the psych ward, we know scary. We had a very sweet woman admit herself for postpartum depression and psychosis. She was not our typical patient we see on our floor, and she really did stick out from the other patients. You would never know when you saw her and spoke to her what kind of intrusive thoughts she was dealing with. It breaks my heart, and because of her, I've become a lot more keen to the needs of postpartum mothers. Anyway, I won't get into detail, but this patient had thoughts of harming herself. One day she woke up with scratches all over her body. When I did her assessment, I asked her what happened. She was just as shocked as I was, and she said she had a dream that a woman was attacking her. She thought maybe she was scratching herself in her sleep. I felt that this was very unlikely to have this many scratches and wounds without waking herself up. I notified her doctor and therapist, and I paid special attention to her that day. She acted completely normal. I arrive at 6:30 a.m. the next day, and I have her as my patient again. We usually try to have the same patients because we feel it helps them be comfortable when their care is consistent. Again, I find her with new scratches now extending to her throat and face. They didn't look like she had been itchy kind of scratches. These were longer, more intentional looking scratches. The patient is visibly upset, and she said she had the same dream with the same woman attacking her. I check her fingernails and they're short. There's no nail at all. There's no way she could have been scratching herself like this. I consult with her doctor and we ask if she would be comfortable having an aide sit in her room overnight to monitor while she slept. The patient agreed. I was off for the next couple days. When I return to work, I see the patient has moved rooms. I call the aide who sat in her room to ask what happened. The aide said that she was embarrassed to admit this, but that night she had been really freaked out. The patient had not been scratching herself in her sleep, but in the middle of the night, she said the room got freezing cold and the aide felt like it was hard to breathe, like the air was more humid. She watched as the patient started writhing in pain and go into what she could only describe as a tonic-clonic seizure. Oh my gosh. Okay, the patient started writhing in pain and went into what she could only describe as a tonic-clonic seizure. The aide contacted the nurse and insisted the patient move rooms. Once the patient moved rooms, there were no more issues. Oh, yikes. That was a good one. Scary.
This guy says that he's been working as a paramedic for many, many years. He loves his job, but he understands that it comes with a lot of sadness at times. Throughout his career as a paramedic, he says that he's experienced a lot of strange things, but the story he's about to tell us is one of the strangest things he's ever witnessed. It was the weekend, and he says that it had been raining a lot, and they were just dropping off somebody at the hospital when an urgent call came in about an accident at the edge of town. So they got to the accident as soon as possible, and when they got there, they noticed that a car had crashed into a pickup truck. He says that a lot of people were injured and only one person had passed away. They immediately started tending to the people who were injured and placed them in the ambulance. Another ambulance even came and they put the rest of the people in there. But the guy telling us the story, he decided to stay behind to help the guys take the body of the person that passed away out of the car. He explains that it took them about an hour to be able to get that body out of the car, and they put the body on the ground and covered it up, just waiting for somebody to come and take it. He said that the people who were going to come get the body were taking a very, very long time, so they just stayed there and waited. So as they were waiting, he said that somebody stopped at the scene of the accident and like a 25-year-old girl came out of the car, and when she did, she looked very desperate. She kept asking everybody, "Where's my mom? Where is my mom?" He said that he told the girl she should calm down a little bit, but that if she needed the information, she would have to go to the police officers to get it. In that very moment, one of the police officers had gotten close to where they were, and that girl started screaming at the officer like, "Where's my mom? What's going on? Tell me where my mom is." The girl even said, "I know my mom's alive, just tell me where you took her, because she just texted me 10 minutes ago telling me she got into an accident, so where is she?" She just wanted to know what hospital they had taken her to so she can be on her way. And that's when the police officer was just looking at her very confused, because the people they had taken to the hospital were all men, and the only woman that was in the car was the person that had passed away. And the guy said that at that point she had already been dead for at least 2 hours. And because the cop was like really confused, he asked if she could see the message that the girl's mom had sent her. And the guy telling us the story said that he was very curious too, so he got really close to them, and he was also looking at the phone that the officer had in his hand that the girl had given. The message that he was able to read with his own eyes said, "Daughter, I have just been in an accident. Don't worry, you're not going to be alone. I love you." And when he was looking at the screen, he could tell that the message said that it had been sent 16 minutes ago. He also noticed that the picture, like the little profile icon on the girl's phone, was indeed the same woman that had passed away in that car. He said that he just like immediately got away from them because the next conversation was going to be the hardest, and he knew that the police had the tough job of letting that girl know that her mother had indeed passed away in that accident. He said that he went as far as to get into that ambulance and just not even look their direction. He just has no idea what happened after with that girl, but he just can't imagine the immense pain she must have felt in that moment. But the thing that he couldn't stop thinking about was how that girl had received a message from the mom when she had been deceased for 2 hours. A mother's love.
I swear the creepiest stuff always happens in hospitals. So Katrina was a nurse in the pediatric oncology part of the hospital, and she was looking after this one little boy that was in rough shape. It seemed like his treatments weren't working anymore, but despite all this, he stayed in pretty good spirits. And he would always wear his Spider-Man costume. Like every day, always in the Spider-Man costume. Sadly, the little boy eventually passed away from his cancer. But then, a few months later, a teen boy gets admitted down the hall. And this was after the little boy had already passed away, so there was no overlap between the two. This boy was also in pretty rough shape and his treatments weren't working anymore. But then one night, a nurse hears him talking to someone inside of his room, but there's no one there. So the nurse goes in to see who he's talking to, and she can't believe what he says. The teen said he just saw a little boy dressed as Spider-Man in his room talking to him. And this little boy was telling him all about Marvel and all about how much he loves Spider-Man. The teen boy ended up passing away a few weeks later, but that story
I had a patient who was close to passing. She was known for being extremely abusive to her children throughout her life.
Ooh, this one's freaky.
Yes.
I remember reading this one.
To the point none of them wanted anything to do with her, and she had 8 children. A couple of hours before she passed, she kept telling me that there was a man in her room and that I couldn't let him take her. I kept assuring her there was no one in the room, although she was persistent that he was going to take her somewhere really bad. She then proceeded to pray and ask forgiveness for over an hour. The last time I went and checked on her before my shift ended, she grabbed my hand so tight, and she said she knew she was going to hell. I looked down and realized she had several bruises on her chest right by her heart. She said, "He keeps pushing me downwards. Don't let him take me there." She passed an hour later, and the entire wing lost power. I have never questioned our maker ever again.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps.
I know. That was one of the ones I read last night, and I was like, oh, I should not do this
That one's
right now.
so scary. Imagine being so terrible that you just like know you're going to hell.
The scariest nursing home I ever worked at, story time. So in my early 20s, I got a job as a cleaner in this really old nursing home / rehabilitation center that we'll call Premier Living. Now this place was 3 stories high, and it was winged off in 8 different sections. It'd have your older folks over here, very sick people over here, rehabilitation over there, addiction over here, and then downstairs there were 2 floors. You had the morgue and then the basement below the morgue. And when I tell you that was the creepiest damn place I ever been, it was terrifying. So up on the 3rd floor, we had this room that was called the sunroom, and it was where all the windows were open, kind of like a play area for the elderly people, and they'd go in there throughout the day, play cards, Yahtzee, bingo, just different board games. They'd watch TV. Sometimes they'd smoke and talk. But the real reason it was called the sunroom was because every evening when the sun went down and it started to get dark, all the patients with sundown syndrome would start acting up in that room. I mean, they would go from talking just like I am right now to sitting there like this. And you would gradually see their face change, and they would turn into a whole different person. If you didn't know what sundown syndrome was and it was your first time dealing with it, you would think they were possessed. There was one elderly woman who would be talking just like this, playing cards or whatever, and then all of a sudden, when the sun went down, she'd go... She would breathe so loud when she did it, she sounded like a dog panting. It freaked me out. Another resident had this baby doll, and she carried it everywhere. She treated it like it was her own baby. She took great care of it. But when that sun went down, she'd turn on that baby. She'd switch up so fast. One minute she'd be, "I love the baby so much," to banging its head on the table. One of the coolest things about working in a nursing home is that you're dealing with all these older people who have lived a lifetime. They all have a past, and every past is different. So they would tell you the coolest stories. They'd tell you stories that were real about their life, and then they would tell you like their legends and folklore from where they were from. For example, Miss Ming, she would tell us these stories about folklore and legends in Japan. One of those stories was that in Japan, there is a ghostly woman, or this beastly type woman, who stands so many feet tall, has long black hair, sharp nails, and she's so tall that she can see up into like 2nd, 3rd story windows. Miss Ming was always telling us about this thing, and as Miss Ming's brain continued to deteriorate, at night she began screaming, saying that this thing was standing at the window watching her. A lot of nights they would have to sedate Miss Ming because she swore this thing was standing or floating at her window. But what freaked me out was one night the nurses called me into her room to help them change her bedpan and her sheets and stuff, and Miss Ming was kind of heavy set, so they would roll her over and I would change the sheet. But as I was putting the sheet on the bed, I stretched my arm across, and when my peripheral vision, like when I glanced up at the window, I could have sworn I saw this pale white face, dark eyes, long hair, just like gleaming into the window. I jumped back and dropped everything, and the nurses are like, "What the hell's wrong with you? Like, put the sheet on the bed." And Miss Ming is like, "You saw her, didn't you? You saw her, didn't you?" And I'm like, "I don't know what I saw." We also had this woman that we'll call Cheryl, who said her husband Albert was a hitman and that he had killed thousands of people throughout their marriage. I'll have to make a video about Cheryl all on its own because that story is so long but interesting. So long story short, while he's gone, she's going through some of their stuff, and she finds a bin out in the garage, and it's full of these notebooks, his journals. Allegedly, she found her husband's kill books where he spoke in detail about the victims, who they were, where they were from, why he killed them. I often wondered if he was a hitman or if he was just a serial killer. Don't know for sure. Now, one of the nurses did report this to the police, but the police said there was no way it could be true. She had to be out of her mind, but I often wondered, was she telling the truth and they just didn't want to investigate it? I don't know. Then there was Mr. Joe. Now, Mr. Joe was an old retiree. He'd been at the home for about 5 years when I started there, and he was probably like 90, 91, somewhere in there. Now, Mr. Joe was really cool, really sweet, always respectful, but sometimes late at night, he would get very scared, and he would swear that there was something standing in the room with him. He would say this thing is standing at the foot of the bed, on his pillow, laying next to him, on the ceiling. Just, it's always with him, following him, and it won't leave him alone until he's dead. But later, his daughter told us that it was his own son that he had shot and killed. Apparently, the son had snuck out of the house. Mr. Joe woke up, thought it was an intruder breaking into the house, but it was a son who had came home late. And Mr. Joe grabbed his pew and unalived him. And then when they cut the lights on and realized it was his son, he just went off the deep end. But the creepiest thing that happened that actually made me quit my job was what Mr. Rick did. So Mr. Rick was about 74 years old. His family admitted him into the nursing home, claiming that he was out of control and they couldn't handle him anymore and he was getting into trouble and he needed to be monitored and supervised. So they put him in the nursing home. Mr. Rick was 74 years old. He was still mobile. He could get up, walk around. Hell, he'd jog around the nursing home sometimes. He was in great shape. But his family admitted him into the nursing home, stating that he was out of control and they couldn't handle him anymore. So I go into work around 7 o'clock that evening. I was 30 minutes late, and it had been storming throughout the day. But that night we had some bad storms come through, and I mean, boom, just thunder shaking the ground, lightning, tornado warnings. It was rough. So around 10 p.m., lights are out, TVs are off. We're making our rounds. And I'm walking around, I'm thinking, you know, something just kind of feels off, but I don't know what it is. Next thing I know, nurses are running down the hallway, the power goes out, and I'm like, what is going on, y'all? And she said, Mr. Rick is missing. Come on, we gotta find Mr. Rick, hurry up. So of course I throw my mop down to the side, we take off, we split up, and I'm paired up with another nurse. And we all start going around searching for Mr. Rick. Now we knew the place was on lockdown, and there was no way for him to get in or out of this place, so we knew he was there somewhere, we just had to find him. So me and this nurse, we go downstairs towards the morgue in the basement, and we get down to the morgue, and the doctor comes in and says, hey, have y'all seen anybody in here? And we said, no, but we're looking for Mr. Rick. Why? He said, because one of our cadavers is missing. I said, what? Where would it go? What do you mean a cadaver is missing? One of the bodies was missing out of the morgue. The doctor said, I don't know, but it didn't just walk off. Somebody took it. Sorry, I had to take a break. But anyways, me and this nurse are standing in the hallway, side by side, and when we get towards the beginning of the next hallway, we see this figure standing down at the end of that hallway we were just at. She looks closer and says, that guy looks weird. Look at his face. His head's dropped down. I said, yeah, he does look weird. Something's wrong with him. It kind of looked like Mr. Rick was standing there holding his head down like this. But when she got closer, she said, that's not Mr. Rick. And when I got closer, I said, that man's naked. That dude is stark naked. And his skin don't look right. Well, why does he look purple like that? What? And then she realized, wait a minute, that ain't Mr. Rick. That's the cadaver. I said, well, if that's cadaver, how's he standing there? She said, I don't know. But then the cadaver, the body, picked his head up, and his eyes was open, and he was looking at us. Well, then his head drops again, and this dead body starts walking towards us, and it picks up pace to where it looks like it's running at us. So I said, oh, hell no, this, I'm out. When I tell you, I didn't give a shit. I took off running. Yes, I left her there. She was screaming, where are you going? I said, listen, fuck you and fuck y'all, I'm done, I'm out. So the next day, everybody was laughing at me because we all found out it was Mr. Rick. He stole the body from the morgue and was standing behind it, holding it up, making it move. That's why it looked like it was walking on its own. I don't care they were laughing at me. I was out. Just picture that, seeing someone hold a dead body at the end of a hallway, making it look like it was walking around and stuff. Yeah, I was done with that job. And I didn't go back there, but I did go to another nursing home, which was even worse. If you want to hear more about the nursing homes, let me know in the comments.